happening with AI and Data Cloud. I created a use case. It mirrors things that I've worked with different clients, and so I'm going to use that as the basis of walking through the study group. If you guys have questions, feel free to raise your hand so I can acknowledge you, and we can move on from there. This is the agenda, the introduction, requirements, migration, integration. I'm gonna try my best to get to everything within the time that we have. If we do not get to everything, I'll make sure that I provide the information to you guys after the session is over. So we're gonna cover our best to the data requirements, migration, integration, the basis of AI and data cloud, all that impact on the MuleSoft API integration, and then we'll end with some ending remarks and some Q&A. And so what's the importance of the study group? Is basically just understand the data-related process and technologies on our integration processes, right? And so this is going to show you the relevance of what I do day to day to a typical client like Tech Savvy Solutions on its current and future projects. So welcome. My name is Sonia McNeil. I am the founder, CEO of Stream Consulting. It's STRM. I pronounce it Stream because we focus on streamlining data processes as well as any solutioning that we use for CRM, ERP, and other legacy system implementation around data. I've been in the industry for over 27 years. I have done a bulk of that 27 years in data management. Some of it when I first started is network technology, so I do have a networking background, but my focus is data management. I focus on data management, business transformation, and strategic consulting through my business. There's a list of things you guys do. I'll share this out with you guys so you can have a snapshot of my background, and also you can connect with me on LinkedIn for additional information about me. Graduated Mississippi State University with computer science as my undergrad. I got an MBA in global management. Started on my doctorate, still working on that. I am a certified Salesforce data architect, as well as some additional other certification with Salesforce. And also I have a background in Microsoft. I was a Microsoft data architect as well. And then also I have a certification in TOGAF Enterprise Architect, where I use that as the foundation of enterprise solutioning around data. Just a little about Stream. Again, we focus on data services as well as CRM implementation. We work and partner with clients and also solution partners because we are a Salesforce partner as well. We work with other partners to help them where they're lacking or do not have this data SME or data expertise to complete the data implementation or the CRM solution implementation. And so we provide them our services as well as working with other clients from beginning to end of CRM implementation as well as data implementation. Here's a list of our services. I can provide you guys my company link at the end of the work study, end of the study group, if you guys would like to have that. But these are a list of our services. We do cloud solution consulting, data consulting, analytics, migration, integration. So now this is what you guys came here for, is to basically for the study group is understand what we're going to cover today, right? So the study group objectives today is basically understand the key concepts, grasping the concepts of data requirements, migration, integration, and AI and data cloud around MuleSoft. Now, I work with other platforms as well. I work with other industry platforms like, let's see, Jitterbit, Microsoft SQL Server, of course, MuleSoft. I work with some other known and unknown, like Skivia. I work with Scribe Online, multitude of other solutions that help you, as well as Informatica, that help with implementing data from legacy systems to new systems or add the new system into the current ecosystem through integration processing. So understanding the key concept is pivotal to a successful project deployment. Analyze the impacts. That's what we're going to be talking about. Examine how each of these elements influence MuleSoft API integration project. um, understanding some of the identifying some of the best practices I identified. I'm not going to cover all of them, but I'm going to cover some that we definitely hone part of our processing day to day with data as well as CRM solutioning. Exploring AI and cloud technology. I'm not going to a deep dive in that, but I do want to discuss because it's such a buzz today. I do want to discuss some of the basics of AI and data cloud that we use, as well as that we've seen with working with clients and how we incorporate those into our data management processes. And then using a use case as a real world scenario to kind of help apply some of these things that we're going to walk through today that I hope they'll be helpful for enhancing your knowledge or just maybe it's a refresher for you what you're doing today already. So the client that we're going to use, the use case is a client named Tech Savvy Solutions. And the objective with Tech Savvy Solution project is they want to be able to explore how data requirements, migration, integrations, AI, and data cloud impact their MuleSoft API integration that they want to initiate, providing some of the practical insights and best practices to enhance their project success. If you think about as a consultant, you're only just not there to advise them on a solution, but you also have to partner with them to see how they can increase their adoption with the solution you are going to implement into their organization. And so we partner with our clients to do certain things like this from beginning to end, and also doing a transition handoff if we're not signed on to support that solution that we implemented. We work with the techs there that are going to take ownership of the solution once we complete deploying it to production. Here's our process. Of course, this is not really new, I don't think, to anyone. We start with a high-level consultation with the prospect or the client who wants to do business with us. We start working on the preliminary ideas around project planning. Then we go into analysis and data requirements. This is a bulk of the upfront lead work that we perform with our clients because without this, we don't know the full scope. You can do a statement of work in the beginning, but sometimes statement of work is not everything you need to initiate a project. So we perform a data requirement workshop and analysis within that workshop once we get the data. And so we go through understanding what the data sources are, what are some of their challenges, what their data strategies or the expectation around the data strategy, and the goals and objectives of the project, uh, what they would like to get out of the entire project or the entire solution once we leave. Because at some point, we as a consultant will leave the project or would leave post-project, and they become uh, the total owner, cost ownership of that solution. So I try to understand it during the workshop exercise. It may take one, it may take five, it may take 10, depending on the complexity of the requirements and also the complexity of the stakeholders' makeup. Then once we get all of that, we turn it into what we call a execution or fulfillment process, where we would take the requirements, apply it to a design of your migration, integration, and as well as the AI and data cloud. Now, data cloud is new, but not so new. The principles of data cloud is still pretty much similar to what we do today around your data management principles. You do the requirement session, you understand, you do a high level analysis, you try to identify any challenges or risks that may impact the project success. And so we still do those things. Those things do not go away just because data cloud or is on the scene. You still maintain those things as applying to data cloud, right? And so also with AI. AI, you want to understand how do they want to use artificial intelligence with their project or with their day-to-day processes, as well as what we do with data management processes, how we want and also include AI to help us to be more productive, more efficient, to help our clients. Because at the end of the day, we want to be a value to our clients and show them how we can help them to be better. And then once we finish all that, the fulfillment is complete. We've gone through UAT, we've gone through, and UAT, just in case you don't know, user acceptance testing. Once we complete that, get approval of everything that's been completed, and then we're ready to proceed to production, and then we deploy to production, and then we do a sign off and approval, and then we do a process called project closeout. and has finalized any activities around that, doing sign off. They're ready to expose it to the broader audience of their user base, things of that nature as part of their project closeout. All right. Now let's start with let's just assume we've gone through the initial consultation. We've gone through the initial project planning because we do another project planning after the requirements workshop is completed. Because if there's anything that's been exposed that the statement of work didn't include or that no one knew through the sales cycle, we identify those during the requirements workshop. And then I do a process of getting them to approve and sign off a requirement worksheet or requirement documentation. So we know what we're working against, and I use that to update the statement of work as well as estimates, and then use that to start designing and implementing and creating a design conceptual diagram to get that also run through the process, make sure that we still are on the same path, what they agreed to with the requirements. So the data requirements workshop this is where you really kind of hone in, get a grasp of what they're trying to accomplish, right? So what are requirements? You're trying to understand what they're trying to, what are the sources involved in the project? Is this one source like one-to-one, meaning their legacy system is going to be decommissioned? Or is it going to remain in play once the project's over? Those are the things that are critical you need to understand, because you also need to understand once you identify those data sources, then you need to understand the technical side of the data sources, right? And you want to make sure you have those key participants a part of your workshop, not just from the business side, you need from the technical side too. You need them both be there because you may have one without the other. And I can tell you that it becomes very challenging because when you start getting to the business side, that may overflow to the technical side and you don't have the right people to speak to that, you're constantly burning hours because now you have to constantly meet everyone over and over again to flesh out what you need to move forward. And so you have to make sure that you're educating them at the same time, collecting and gathering requirements. Because sometimes clients do not know how important their role are in the requirements workshop. And I've been there where there are some clients who do not want to participate. Well, you want to educate them the severity of their participation or how critical their participation is to the project success. And also you want to make sure they understand that if they're not involved, how it may impact time, money, and success. And when you put it in the words that they understand, especially to the dollar, then you'll get more participation and they'll be more involved and more eager to be a part of the process so they can make sure that we all are meeting their needs. There is a technique that I use, several techniques. I try to understand my audience upfront. I do a interview, high-level interview of, again, doing the common things that you guys may do already from the MuleSoft side and from other systems you guys use, is you want to have a dialogue. You don't want to talk at the client. You want to have a dialogue. You want them to be able to give you a response. Now, what I typically do is send out a survey or a questionnaire prior to the workshops to get them to respond so I have something to start with. But it may have been 50-50, 50% where I have clients that complete it and 50% I have clients who not complete it. So you have to be prepared during those workshops to have nothing to start with. And so I have a list of questions, common questions I ask every client I work with, so they can get a feel of what things are important to us, for me as the architect to understand from their side, and for me to relay that to my team as well. So we do an interview, we do questionnaires, we do a workshop as the one I'm talking about. I don't pick and choose a workshop. I make that part as a requirement because you want to build a rapport with your clients. You want to build a rapport with the audience, and a workshop is the best option for me to do that. To have a workshop to build a rapport and they understand what we're trying to get at. And then you go through the best practice for completeness and accuracy. What does that mean? That means you need to understand what is their health to the data. Sometimes clients do not know the health of their own data, right? Their health state. And sometimes they assume that it's pristine. And that is not the case. They have not had one case, maybe one, out of all my years of working with data and projects, that where they were 100% accurate of their data being pristine, and there was no risk to whatever the next process would be with the migration integration. And so we do a high level data analysis to understand if there's a completeness and accuracy, if there's things that we need to get them to look at prior to the design phase. And then we start talking about and so I go through multiple processes, is understanding the scope, understanding all the components involved. Then I talk to them and educate them on the processes, right? The data migration process. Why is that different from the integration process? Because I separate them two out. I like to start with understanding, is there any historical data involved in this project? Do you want to see well, what would you like to see on day one of go live? If you like to see all historical data, meaning if you've been in business for 10 years and you want to see 5 years of that data, and which could be a gig of volume, could be 2 gig, could be that you don't know. So those are things you have to understand, because you don't want your integration to process a large amount of data real time on day one. You need to make sure that they have the historical data, they can still conduct their business on day one of go live. So you can start using update or synchronization of any change that happened from the existing system. Um, and so I try to tell them the difference between migration. I tell them the difference between migration and integration, and the impact of integration that we need around requirements, migration, anything that we need to walk through, and how, if we don't get through those processes, what's the risk to the integration process. There are some common pitfalls, right? There are things that where you may have a large amount of historical data they want to use integration for. I don't typically advise that, because if there are a lot of orders, let's think about that, orders and invoices they want to integrate to the new system. There may be large amount of that. There may be things that if you don't have the accounts there first for the orders and invoices, then you're gonna have a lot of errors and things of that nature. So I like to have a process in place to have what the critical data subjects that I want to have in place before I kick off the integration process. So the next thing, so let's think about this. So I go through the workshop with the migration and things of that nature. I'm sorry, with the requirements. Let me step back and I'll show you guys at the end of the study group, if we have time, is I call it my data requirement or data workshop ebook or playbook, if you will. It is very comprehensive. It's a list of things that I walk through. I might not walk through all of it, depending on the audience, but I pull a lot out of that playbook that I discuss with the clients, so they have a good idea, and also with the technical team, to have a good idea of what I'm looking for and what I need for their team to be successful. So the next phase of the process is the migration, right? So during this workshop, I go through and try to understand their different requirements around the data subject. You know, the accounts. Should I pull in all accounts, or should I only pull in open accounts, or should I pull in both active and inactive accounts? Those are things I try to understand, because sometimes, depending on the client, they might not want to see inactive accounts in the new system. They might want to still go through cleaning out those inactive accounts in their legacy system and only want to use useful information in a new system. And why is that important? Because if you don't get a better understanding, and they don't understand the type of things that they may be pulling into the new system, they may be repeating bad habits or things they're trying to get away from in the old system. They may be repeating that into the new system. And so you want to work with them and partner with them and teach them and train them to understand, if you don't change the process, if you don't change the thinking process, you're going to repeat the same things you're trying to correct into the new system. So we want to talk through those challenges with them and understand what some of the difficulties, the changes they have around their existing data, which I call historical data. If it's not new data post go live, then to me it's historical data, because it's data that we have to move over into the new system that they may have already be working with, right? And so I try to understand their data migration criteria, counts, contacts. Are we looking for opportunities? Are we doing quotes? Things of that nature. I try to understand the definition and types. Do they care about batch or real time? We know, to me, migration typically are not real-time data, right? I do them in batches because it depends on when the data is being created and when they need to be initiated into the new system. I use real-time category or type of data for the integration process. And so why data migration is important to the integration? I kind of already hit on this, but is to me is very critical to the integration process because if you are missing data, which I've had that happen where we had a client have clients who will forego the migration process and then we get to integration and they tell me, well, we only want certain things for the integration to appear in the new system. And then when we started doing it during the testing process, we quickly realized what we were advising them what would happen, but we need to sometimes have to show and tell. So they quickly realized that without that migration, they were missing critical information, like certain counts that wasn't there in the system prior to integration synchronization. So you get errors because accounts is critical for orders. Accounts are critical for invoices. Accounts are critical for for contacts. Any related data, downstream data that's related to accounts, if you didn't have all the accounts into the system, you're gonna get multiple errors and so those are conversations you need to have and get that across to your clients. So those are also some of the challenging strategies. Those are the things that sometimes, if you don't articulate it to the client to understand, there's a process in how you, um, let's say, have the data rested in a new system. There's a process you want to incur that occur in the new system and not skip things because you will see quickly those errors will start popping up. And if you don't fix them during the testing process, you will see that in your production system, and you will notice there will be an adoption, user adoption KPI start decreasing because now your data is not reliable to them, right? And so we always try to kind of start from the end, like what is important around user adoption is the reliability of your data, then what we recommend and you go through these steps first before we synchronize the data on the with integration, because you're going to start missing certain key elements that your users going to want to need or looking for until you train them a different way. Um, Challenges that we try to address and strategy try to address with the migration, you can see here common issues, data loss, downtime. Again, if we didn't do a migration, there's maybe significant downtime of the new system because there's data that may be missing for the integration to synchronize with. Um, an impact on MuleSoft API. It's to me is the basis principles. Your MuleSoft is the same, integration with MuleSoft is the same thing with any other integration. Those basic principles you want to be able to pin, pull in, and fill in gaps of your data. You don't want data missing once your integration is initiated, even real time. Um, there may be things you can fix. I'm pretty sure you can fix to go back and grasp historical records to fill in. But why would you want to do that if you just go through the right process and educate them that let's get all the data seed into the new system first before we start synchronizing so we know that we're not missing critical records, right? Success stories. I have a lot of them. Lesson learned, I have more. um, when you are when you don't educate the clients well enough to where, or let's say this, if you don't gain buy-in from certain clients to follow the process, um, there are lesson learned in that. And there are also ways that you can educate them when you hit hiccups, because you may have difficulties getting them to buy in your process to go full cycle of the process, because there may be time sensitive issues they're trying to address. There may be a cost issue they're trying to address. But I can tell you that if you don't not follow your process that you know that works, you will still run into those time issues. You will still run into those cost issues because now you have to go back and start filling in those gaps that if you had baked it into your design early on, you wouldn't have to do those, go back and rework. So I want to pause because I know I said a lot. Is there any questions that from the study group that you have right here? I can keep going, but I want to make sure that I'm addressing questions. Raise your hand you have, or speak up. All right, so we'll keep going. Oh, okay. Hey, Ryan.
I'm just raising my hand to say hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm
How
late.
are you?
Well, thanks for sharing your all your wisdom. I'll just follow along and I'll tell you if I have questions.
Okay, no problem. And with Ryan, I know Ryan because he worked with me on a few of these projects, especially with the MuleSoft integration, and we ran into some of those lessons learned that I spoke about, where clients were initially trying to cut down on cost and time, but their requirements didn't change. And so that ran into a big problem with cost and time, but also it ran into a big problem when we started running into issues because there were some learning curve there on the client side where they didn't understand why things was important that we kept communicating for the integration. And so migration was a big part of that when they decided they wanted to not have migration completed, and we started going through the design process, and they realized how much data they were going to be missing from the migration, and the integration would not be able to handle that because we were going based on their design requests. We had to go through a lot of rework, and that they were not happy, and because of that, and that's something unfortunately you have to face, right? You have to have those serious conversations, true conversation around your requirements and also around the impact. So, hey Ryan.
Hey, yeah. So I don't know if you did it on a previous slide. Part of that trouble with the requirements in particular, the precision about it is there was dependencies, right? There was if you don't migrate certain data first, then the next data that comes in won't go, right?
Right,
Did
right.
you already cover that, or is that coming?
Yes, one
Okay.
example I was giving them is, let's say for instance, if the clients wanted to have orders and invoices, which is required by which require accountants. So if you don't bring in all the accounts, and whether it's active, inactive, but they want the orders and invoices, but you have those order invoices tied to inactive accounts, you're gonna have an issue. But the client don't understand it. So those are things that during a requirement workshop, you kind of have to educate them on some of the requests they have when they give you and say, well, we don't want any migration, we just want integration. And I start polling them more questions. So when they tell me things like that, I start bringing up more questions to get them to think, because sometimes during a workshop, when they come in, they really haven't thought through the requirements they're giving me. So I start having a conversation with them to talk through that. And then they start saying, oh, now I understand what you're saying. Yeah, we're gonna need that. Okay, Whitney, you're next.
First of all, thank you for doing this because this gives us a scope into issues that run for small businesses or independent consultants or just different things like that. Sometimes I know myself, I work for a large partner, and one of the ways the partner maybe handled this was through change management process, and they had to manage like scope creep. So
Yes.
do you do your change management process, or do you have a dedicated person that is managing that, um, and maybe cutting a new SOW or statement of work? Because
Right.
I think these are issues that the average MuleSoft developer doesn't really think about, um, but it should come up.
Right. So on the developer side, they probably won't be a part of that process. But if you are the architect of the project, you will be a part of that process, right? And so I have been implementing my own change management. I definitely would, and then but if it got too many, I would have a dedicated person. But yes, what would happen is if there was scope creep or requirement changes, I would initiate a meeting to discuss those things. And if they decide they want to move forward, then we will create a new statement of work with those additional changes. Now you have to be, if you are a subcontractor, I'm going to start with this way. If you are a sub for another partner, right, and you're performing the work, because there's different ways to handle that. If you're the sub and you're handling all the data work for that partner, then you're submitting a statement of work changes or change management changes to that partner by way through the customer to their end client. And so there have been issues where you have the customer who's small in nature, but they want enterprise solution. Didn't understand the magnitude of enterprise solution against their budget, right? And so when they start making a lot of changes, they don't realize that there's time and material that's increasing because of those changes keep occurring. So it's extremely important that you track all your requirements and requirement changes. If you are the architect and if you're wearing multiple hats, I will, like Whitney was saying, I will have a dedicated, or I would recommend having a dedicated person to help with that, because it is a lot to keep up with, especially if you have, and Ryan can speak to this with one of our clients that we had in the past. They kept rapidly changing requirements in a knee deep of our development. And so we were working in initial development or design and was kind of addressing some things that we were revealing through their own system. And while we were doing it, they were coming up with more requirements. And so without the change management piece of your process, you would quickly realize how much time and energy you're burning. So you want to track everything.
That's
Hey
what
Ryan, go ahead.
I just want to add on to that. Like I totally agree. That's the way. That's a big risk when you're hiring outside people to do data migrations and data integrations for you, right? And it's also a risk when it's your own people, because
Yes,
there's weeks and weeks of time that can get flushed down the toilet. Like if the way you manage your requirements is sloppy, so it's easy for time to get burned. What would I call it? It's like there are requirements changes that are a good idea to discover along the way of the project, but you just got to be real disciplined about it. Otherwise, you can wander. I don't know if any of you other people here have had project teams that really, it's a good thing to adapt to change, but too much of that and you're going in circles. And
right,
you
right.
decide to do an upfront migration. No, 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 we're going to make it a real-time migration. No, 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 no. Let's do a nightly job. No, 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 let's do a nightly job for these tables and a real-time integration for these tables. You can't change that kind of fundamental stuff every week, right? and
Right, you cannot,
and
because
expect
they don't
to
think
not,
about, they
yeah.
think that they think it's easy to change your design of the migration because it's like, it's just data. It's just data, so don't worry about it. But that's where the education come in, and you have to educate that client. And if they're refusing to listen and heed to some of the advice recommendation, then you do definitely have to make some decision, kind of stick to your process. Because at the end of the day, if they keep making change and you have to keep changing your process, you're the one is going to deem um, as inefficient or incompetent in their mind because you're allowing them to keep changing. And so I've definitely been there. And so those are the things you want to kind of flesh out doing, I would say upfront in your workshops. I would definitely iron out your process before you meet with your clients and to make and walk them through their process, educate them your process, and this is what you maintain throughout the entire project life cycle. Because it is extremely hard, like Ron said, extremely hard to keep making changes week to week around how you're going to design your solution to meet the requirements if they keep changing requirements or they keep changing the fundamentals of the principles that you've already laid out during the workshops. All right, so having said that, why does that impact the integration and why does it impact the MuleSoft API integration? So when I think about integration, I kind of lump it all because to me, the principles of any integration platform should not change. The underlying fundamentals of things. Now, how you work with each platform, how you work with each solution does change because their mechanics are different from a platform to platform. But the principles of the foundation of it and how you implement the design, how you design your migration or your integration process, there to me, they've been common across all clients, across all organizations I've worked with, and across all peers that I've worked with. You want to understand what they're trying to accomplish through migration as well as through integration. And again, I separate those two because they are different in nature to me. but they do impact one another. The migration doesn't impact integration, and integration impacts your migration, right? So, because if you perform an migration and the requirements changed some way that integration changes your existing migration data, that they're going back to validate and they don't understand why it changed because when they go to their old legacy system, it's different. Then there's a problem, and there could be some coding issues with integration. So those are things you definitely want to lay out in your requirement session. Understand what the integration is, what type of integration they want to implement. They might not be able to tell you that, but the undercore requirements should tell you what type of integration they want. ETL or ELT or real time. Real time, you try to get them to lay out how often, when do you need to see the changes in your data in a new system, right? How critical is the changes? What is your process? Because sometimes they don't think their business process is going to impact when the data should show up in a new system. And that is the wrong mindset, right? And so you have to be well aware about you have to be an active listener. That's totally a requirement. And so you have to understand when they tell you that it takes them a week to complete a quote, but they want the data to be there in 10 minutes before the quote is completed, then you know that's a problem. That's a risk, right? So you need to understand some level of their business process because that will impact when the data should show up in the new system. Hey,
I don't know if you're ready for me. And if
I am.
if I ask stuff that's coming later, just tell me that. There's a business process I'm curious about that I run into all the time. I wonder if you run into it. What do you think about designing processes with reconciliation? You know what I mean? So the data integration, the migration happens, the real-time integrations, the ETLs, but sometimes the data, like I've been asked to have reconciliation reports that go look at both systems and see the differences every night, and I give those to business people. Do you do that?
I
What do you think about that?
I I think it's important, but I also think that governance needs to be talked about. Because to me, reconciliation with what they just said, that to me is a governance. Uh, if that's a report that can be completed, but if they're identifying that I, as the architect of the solution, needs to review that, then I'm gonna say, well, who are your data stewards? Because we need data stewardship here implemented to be able to look at this reports and identify the issues and make some decisions because I don't want to be the one to make the decision on the data. There needs to be, if there's going to be a business decision, it needs to be a business decision, and there needs to be a data steward to make those decisions and kind of escalate it to the powers that be. If they're not aware what decision need to be made, because I don't want to be the one to make the decision. I can make some recommendation to help them, but I don't want to make the business decision, especially if I'm not running their business. Did they answer the question?
Well, the reconciliation I've had to do is usually some kind of a reporting tool that does go to the business. And that, but it takes time and effort to make it, right? So I got to make something that reads both sides and matches
Oh,
them
I
up.
see what you're
And
saying.
then I got to make it run on a schedule, and then they never look at it, or they do look at it, but maybe not soon enough. And then the integration runs again the next day, and now the report they're looking at is out of date. So there's a lot around the business process,
Yeah.
data integrity. I'm just curious what your opinions are on it.
Yeah, I mean, I I don't know, Ron, because it's still I agree that it's needed, but I think it's still a big part of governance. Like even if you design the system to do the reconciliation and create the reports, but there's no one reviewing the reports to help before the next pull or the next sync, and then there's an endless cycle. Then to me, that governance, there's no governance in place because I think there needs to be a governance team to implement and to enforce the design that you put in place because then they just wasting money and time, right? Hey, Whitney.
I was going to just make a suggestion. Ryan, if you're creating that tool every time, just create it once and reuse it.
like maybe create that process. You want to create the process and just reuse the process. So it has to be like a API to be
What's
plug and play into.
it seems like he's creating a tool that's going to read between, yeah, I guess a plug and play tool, API, or however he wants to do it. But if he gets a lot of clients that's asking for that, I would create it once as almost like a product, right? And I would sell that product in my offerings
Oh, I see what you're saying.
so that they can use it. Because he's identified a problem, right? This is what his customers want. So instead of redoing it over and over and over again for each person,
It
I would
comes
just
up
kind
in
of
data
productize that.
migration. Yeah, in data
Yeah,
migration,
it
especially.
comes up with mine too, Ryan, and
Yeah.
it's something that we incorporate when they're having validation issues and they don't have a team to help with the validation. The problem is even if you create the tool, there's an underlying problem. They're not reviewing the output. And so even if you have the tool in place, they're not reviewing it. So if there anything needs to be tweaked or anything, or data, they need to address the data, they're not viewing the reports and making a decision prior to the next sync. And so it's almost like you also have to have a repository of where those changes will occur so they can see change in data or see the history of the changes. So they know if there's a bug that needs to be addressed from the business side. But that's again, that's that's making a lot of, you're trying to code for all the assumptions that you can think of without the business being a part of.
So I have another question. Do you guys do staging process? Like, do you create a staging environment? Maybe, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if you need to duplicate the original data or whatever. Um, and then you do mock integrations to try to see where these potential issues would occur in a real migration before you even get to the real migration. Because there's going to be issues, right? There's going to be things that need to be fixed and one-time syncs that you might need to have in place until you shut off of system and things like that. But how do you mitigate as much as possible the need to do a lot of data reconciliation?
So but think about you can't really test reconciliation on test data. So yeah, answer your first question. Yes, we do staging and we do a mock test migration integration way before we go to live. I make that a requirement. And when I have clients that don't want to do that, I push for it because it always happens when I don't follow my process with using staging and use a test environment for all data. Um, and I allow them to kind of say, well, we don't want to do that. We just want to go to kind of because they want to hurry up and finish. It always blows up in my face when I do that because the client don't realize the impact of those decisions to the data and the changes they're seeing and not seeing. Because when the stakeholders they just see the front end of the data, the results of the data, right? They don't see the mechanics and what goes into getting the data to them to see it in the way they want to see it. And so I go through a whole test process with that and then get them to sign off. This is what they want. And so you can test the reconciliation process to a point. Um, and I say that because I've gone through, and I'm pretty sure everybody, and probably some of you guys on the call have gone through that too. You can test through all the scenarios that they have identified with you, but there's always a few scenarios they have not thought about until they start having real people work with the data on a day to day. And sometimes they don't go through all that you user acceptance testing that you push for with the data to go through those use cases that you're not aware of because you don't work with their data day to day. You're going based on what they're communicating to you. So you can only design against what they're telling you, as well as some things of your own best practices. So I totally agree with the tool. It's just you still have to have to me, management principles in place as well as the governance around some of the things that Ron brought up and things I've seen. Because you can code all day long, you can tool all day long, but the business have to take some ownership. All right. So how does this? So tell me, how you guys, and so we have a lot of MuleSoft SMEs on the call, right? And things that we're talking about now does impact and benefit the MuleSoft API integration without understanding the requirements of your migration integration, because I know that some of you guys may use the API to perform your migration process. I love that for you. I definitely love that. It's just I don't do it because the large volume of data that I've been used to doing with the migration, I don't really like doing it through API or the integration because there may be certain things that they're looking for in a migration that may not be available in the API. And so I like to kind of use that as my basis for understanding what the risk would be doing a migration. So I can start saying, okay, with integration, here's a risk. Well, because you wanted this for the migration, but now we know that this is not possible with the integration. So here's my recommendation. And so those are the things I like to kind of highlight and understand during the stage and test situation. So they're aware of that before we go live. Um, I had a link, but the link is not showing up. There was some examples of tools and applications that I've used through my requirement sessions as well as migration integration. But again, as your MuleSoft role, they will not change. I do not believe they would change. You still need to go through some of the things I'm talking about with your workshops and trying to get as even as a developer. I know that some developers may leave it to the BA or leave it to the product owner to kind of come out and tell you, okay, these are our requirements, and that's great. But sometimes as a developer, I still want to understand what they're trying to achieve because I may see something that the product owner or BA may not have captured or understood from the requirements, right? And so I start seeing something, I start communicating back to the product owner or the BA to say, here's what I'm finding an issue with this requirement. Either we need to go on a call with the client or you need to run this back to them and get my answer so I know if this is the best design for this particular requirement or not. All right, so I talked about the use case that I'm using as a way to kind of communicate some of the things. I'm gonna do a time check. Ooh, I'm sorry guys, it's 12:55. I didn't realize how much time we went through. So I use this as a solution, tech savvy as my use case. Some of the things that I've done through migration, integration, and things of that nature is kind of I put it in this use case. So Tech Savvy Solutions was tasked with integrating its legacy CRM system. I do that all day, every day, right? They have a legacy CRM system. They may have a legacy ERP system. They may have a legacy spreadsheet they're conducting their business on. I've had that too. And now they decide they want to use a new process, a new system to do what their legacy system is incapable of doing, right? So they're integrating with the legacy CRM system with new, more robust platform using MuleSoft API. The project involved migrating data from an outdated system to ensure a smooth transition and continuity of operations. That's pretty straightforward, right? So we know the first thing is migration. And some of the issues that I've faced and seen is data quality issue with the migration. You may have duplicates of accounts. You may not have, they don't have a good record of system in their legacy system, meaning they're not using primary keys. So you don't have unique keys to use to leverage, which is to me is critical to have legacy system, legacy IDs. Doing your migration, because if you ever have to trace back the data to the legacy system, you have no way of doing it without that unique ID. So those are the things I've ran into. The data is incomplete. It may be outdated. It's inconsistent from record to record. And so those questions we try to face with the client if they're unaware of. System downtime. They want to be able to do a live migration without going down at all. Or they may have a date they cannot go down prior to that date, and so we have to do a live migration, meaning we might do a let me say a bulk migration from beginning, like to say for last 5 years and up to the date. And so we'll grab that data, migrate it to the test environment, and then we'll do a rolling migration for any changes of the data so they can see the latest and greatest for testing. So we do that. We map through that, make sure we have it down. So make sure when we go to live, we have to go through that same process to ensure there's no downtime, because we had a client or several clients that would be 24/7. So they didn't have downtime. We could not bring them down or shut the system down for a period of time. So data is not changing ongoing. And so we work with that. It was a challenge phase, as well as mapping. We had to make sure the records from source to target field mapping were accurate. And there are times when they're not accurate when you get the information from the client. So there's another challenge you have to face, or they couldn't give you information to help you map the fields. You had to go based on visual, or make some assumption around what fields to map if they couldn't tell you those questions. But they have to tell you that. They have to be a part of that process. And I have a full case study overview, but we don't have time to go through that. But this is basically what my use case have been from client to client. Is I have an understanding of what they're trying to accomplish, identify the challenges, and then I start design against the objectives, as well as incorporate the challenge in my design. So I make sure I'm addressing those designs. They'll make sure those challenges in my design. Next is we talk about the integration. So tech savvy still is part of the project. They want to integrate the system. So maybe they're adding another system as part of the integration. So they may be getting rid of their legacy CRM system, but they may have another system they want to include or keep in the ecosystem. So tech savvy want to streamline operation by integrating various internal systems. Like I said, an ERP system, CRM. They may not be on Salesforce, they may be using Dynamics. And I have had clients who kept Dynamics in their ecosystem, but also use Salesforce. So they divide and conquer. They use Dynamics for one function of the CRM and use Salesforce another function of CRM, right? And so they wanted to include ERP, their ERP system, both CRM system, and their e-commerce platform using MuleSoft as the orchestration of the data synchronization. And so the goal was to create a unified data ecosystem that improved accessibility to the data and operational efficiency. And here are things that, again, they're faced. Siloed data systems. You have disparate systems and you have users working in multiple systems, but the data would not synchronize. So that means you have to have one system. This literally happened. This person was in 5 systems and logged in 5 different systems and trying to bring the system up and down to try to see, okay, I'm gonna type this record in. Let me retype it in this system, let me retype in this one. It may be different in each system, each 5 systems, right? And so they wanted to get rid of that. They wanted to centralize the user base to where they work in 1 or 2 systems, maybe cut down 3 of the systems so they don't have to making sure the data was accessible and they can trust the data. And so they want to make sure the data was consistent between the systems. They want to make sure that the data is showing up real time when it needs to in a system that has to have real time data. When to do it, I still have time or am I running? Okay,
We go anywhere between 60 and 90 minutes. You can
okay.
adjust.
I didn't get a chance to place the link on like Google Drive or something for everybody to have access. So I'm gonna do that.
If you could drop it in the chat, that would be helpful.
Okay, but it's not. I don't think they'll be able to access it though, because it's not on the Google Drive. They can access it's my local drive, so I just got to post the link to the Google Drive.
If I can get at it, I can put it somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll upload it to you. All right. So here's one of the big buzz, right? The big buzz is artificial intelligence. It's been around for a while, but this last year has definitely been in the forefront of everybody's mind is how to use artificial intelligence to improve our way of doing things, to improve our operations, to improve our productivity. And so how can we use AI around our data processes? So let's talk about just the basic concept of artificial intelligence. It is a simulation of human intelligence processed by machines, especially computer systems, right? Here's some key areas. machine learning, natural language processing, robotics, computer vision. I have seen and used it in certain areas. I'm just going to name a few, but there's a lot more than the ones I've listed here. Use AI and automation, like in Salesforce, automating flows, automating record creation, automating um, let's see, sending out alerts, right, when something occur. So if you don't have users actually logging into Salesforce, or you don't have a user license for the user, they're getting those alerts, so they may be doing some troubleshooting around external system, so they can still see what's happening when records are trying to be created or integrated into the system. Um, it's grown in robotics, process automation. I know you guys have seen that for repetitive tasks. I've seen it 10 years ago when it was introduced to me using RPA with Salesforce, not Salesforce, SharePoint, to automate some tasks around creating records in the repository um, of SharePoint. Increasing use of AI to enhance business process and productivity. How can it enhance productivity? Well, if you're automating repetitive tasks, then those are tasks that don't need to be created by a user. And so that user can focus on things that they can focus on without having to constantly go in to create a case. I had a process, or have a process now, when a user is submitting an issue then to my website, a support issue, then that issue is automatically created into as a case in Salesforce, and then it's assigned to a engineer, and then it also automates a response back to the client to let them know that here's your case number, here's your description of your issue. We'll be contacting you in so many, in such a time for further information around your issue. So they also increase productivity on my side with my team members, my engineers, but also productivity with the client, because now they don't have to constantly run behind me or run me down to find out, what's going on with their case, what's the case, some things of that nature, right? So increasing use of AI to enhance business processes and productivity is key of using AI along with some other things. What are some verticals or industries that you've seen AI? I've seen it using it in healthcare, finance, especially in customer service, and a lot more. Customer service, I think, was maybe to me, one of the leaders of using AI. Because why? You working with, there was a time we only talked to people on the phone, but now you working with maybe chatbot to respond to an issue, or QuickBooks. When I search for something, I get a response from a bot instead of a person. Or if it's escalated, it says, excuse me, it sends it to a specialist, and that specialist responds back to me in a timely manner. Oh, sorry, go back. So specifically for data management, where areas I've seen it to be applied, data quality improvement. We're using AI now to help us do data cleaning. Now, I have seen some they're not so great, and I've seen some is still getting there, but it's all about teaching and learning. I mean, teaching and improving the AI to help data process. Because to me, data processing is, you have to find where it works well in and where it doesn't work well in, right? There are certain areas that AI work well in as long as you code it to work on those given things. And we see now that it's growing and growing in chat PT or GBT and other areas where you're going to use it to help you increase your data management processes. But these things are still learning, so you definitely still have to have a watchful eye. To me, you still need a data steward to help, even around AI applications and data management, or especially around data cleaning. You want to make sure the data is actually being cleaned against the criteria that you coded. So you have to have those data cleaning rules in place, as well as standardization rules in place that the AI can use to help to meet those needs until it learns through the algorithm how you want to feed the data and how you want it to clean and standardize. Because we're involved, like as humans, we evolve. So the machine learning, your AI has to evolve with you. The data cleaning process will evolve. There are things that I saw 2 decades ago that was efficient for data cleaning. That's not efficient today. They're more complex. They want more things involved with cleansing their data, because their needs has become more mature and complex. Data integration, automated data mapping, and real-time integration. Automated data mapping, I think you can automate it, and I've done it in certain cases where data cloud. You can have it automate data mapping, and also I saw that in MuleSoft. You can automate data mapping based on the names. You can automate data, your mapping of the fields based on the name. There are cases where it doesn't work 100% because there may be variation of the naming that you have to specify to make sure that that field is mapped to the correct field. And also there's things that you see that the fields may be read-only that it try to map, but it shouldn't map because you can't write to a read-only field. So those things you still have to put a watchful eye just to make sure that you don't have any errors around your mapping of your fields. And I just put a note, there are a lot more application of AI in data management that serve very useful in meeting your data goals. I'll upload all the material and resources that you guys so you can view them, and then you can also reach out to Ryan or Whitney or me if you have further questions about, what other applications in data management that you can use AI in, as well as data processes. I'm still working on using AI in data requirements because data requirements to me is tricky. Common ones across the board, I think you can incorporate in AI, and hands down, it may work. But to me, it's not 100% because to me, you have to have that user involved to help capture those requirements, especially if they're not answering what you need through the questionnaire. And if they don't have time to answer the questionnaire, you have to have conversations to get the requirements you need to move forward with your design. Any questions about that? And so there are AI-driven tools specifically for or used with MuleSoft. I'm going to show you. I'm hoping it opens up. Can you guys see my screen?
Well, just the artificial intelligence slide.
Oh. Let me do a new reshare. I have to share the screen. What about now?
Now we see a PDF.
Okay. So here's just kind of give you an example of some of the tools that AI tools that work with MuleSoft. You have the MuleSoft Endpoint AI. Ryan, have you used that yet? Or Whitney, have you guys used that yet? There's a
Einstein
native
Copilot.
AI tool.
It's beta. I'm not in it.
Oh, okay, got you. You have the MuleSoft Endpoint AI. You have Data Robot. IBM Watson. I haven't used that yet. And you have Google Cloud AI. You have AWS AI services. So these are like, I think I got like 10 or 11 tools that work with MuleSoft around AI integration. I've worked with Talent. I like Talent. There's some things that I wish it'd do better, but I like Talent. Plunk. I think I've heard you use this before. Have you, Ryan? I feel like there was a
I'm using
conversation I heard you
Splunk,
use
but
it.
not with any machine learning or AI. They have Splunk apps that get installed on Splunk. So I'm just using plain old Splunk, which is more like logs and statistics, but the platform
Gotcha.
certainly has capabilities for that.
Right. It's definitely from what I've heard and seen. I seen a demo, maybe a couple of months ago around enhancing. It wasn't with MuleSoft, but it showed how it can enhance monitoring analysis for certain data projects that I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Gives you like operational insight. It almost reminded me of SQL monitoring.
Yeah,
Um,
so with MuleSoft, you might stream all of your logs from your different Cloud Hub apps into Splunk, or you could also plug in anypoint monitoring, so all the data goes in Splunk in case you want to do reports on Mule along with other data that's not from Mule. Splunk can do
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. The last one is it used to be is one of my favorites, Alteryx.
Mhm.
It's a great tool. It was one of the first two I used to work with when I used to work with General Motors. Um Alteryx and Tableau. I think that was the first organization I saw them using it. One of the guys, one of the data SMEs there, he used it, he was a fan. He was like cold-hearted, like a architect or architect, and he used it for all type of insights, data import, data exploring, analytics, things of that nature. It's also including cleansing, improving, and working out some things to kind of orchestrate how you want data to arrive to a certain spot. And so it was a great enhancement to integrations. Because I used to use it's a platform I cannot remember, it's ABI, IBM, some IBM integration tool.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it now.
So I
But
haven't
we
got my
use it
hand on
against that.
Alteryx. That's interesting.
Yeah, I like the tool. It's great. They've come a long way too. All right, so like I said, I'll share out those links and I'll send them to you so you can post them and share it out to everybody. Um, I think it would be helpful if you guys have experience with those tools. I think it definitely is worth adding to your tool set for your career, or especially with AI being a big push now. Some of the impact on API integration using AI, it helps with optimizing and enhancing MuleSoft API integration with AI. It's not just MuleSoft, it's other platforms that it helps with optimizing our integration. Jitterbit, SQL Server, Microsoft is trying to incorporate AI around SQL Server, um, using Azure services, AWS. So those are definitely options to look into to see how AI is increasing the efficiency around data. Just keep in mind, it's not a one fix all type solution. I had a client, another example of tech savvy. He wanted a way to use AI to do the entire orchestration of his data. But I was not, but it could work. It just couldn't work all in one. There were some things that had components that had to be put in place in order for AI to work with what he was trying to accomplish. And what he was trying to accomplish is be able to pull in files from a file system, file server, be able to look at, let's say I give you a requirement around quotes. And if you choose a product that may match what has already been out there maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago or even last week, he wanted to look at that product and compare to look up against existing quotes against his file server and be able to use AI to create a new quote based on that information. The prop to autofill a new quote with all information based on the product inquiry that you got and that you want to sell. And so it was a great case. It's just there were some things that had to be put in place in order for that to happen because you're doing a data comparison. You may have to read all the PDF in different files. It was PDF, Excel, it may be Word doc, maybe everything that's in that file server under different folders. And you had to look for the naming for this particular product and be able to scan and pull in information to be able to autofill. So you need to store that data somewhere. You need to store the data like in a staging environment. Store so you can be able to store the information and then be able to pull it and then auto-populate this new quote file and then store it in a new system. So it was a way to,
What a fun problem. I mean,
yeah,
I love ugly stuff like that you gotta, oh man.
Yeah, it's a great case.
Mhm.
And it was also he was looking to there was a one guy who had been managing this process for 20 years. So it was
Of
also
course.
it was yeah, it was also an opportunity to
Mhm.
improve the process and remove the single fail the single fail because I think the guy was getting ready to retire.
Of course.
And
Of
so
course.
he wanted to find a way to remove the dependency. Yeah,
Cool.
but that's a great case.
Is that done? Did you finish that one?
No, because I haven't heard back from him. It's like it was such a good case. I was like, that would have been awesome to do.
Yeah.
And then also look at what tools to use, whether you use MuleSoft, but it was also a very budget constraint, restricted project.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was still trying to get with him to understand what does he want to do? Do you want to do an approach? Because, guys, you also want to maybe just talk to people if they're, especially if they're budget conscious, if there is an approach phase approach process that they want to incorporate in the project. You may identify like maybe we can incorporate feeding the inputs into AI or feeding take AI out of it for a minute because to me AI is the last thing you need to think about. Think about all the different mechanics. Like how am I going to read all these different files in these different subfolders on this file server? That's one of the primary things you need to find out, right? And then be able to open up each file. One, you need to search. You need to do a comprehensive search against this file server. Then once you find the folder that has the name that you're looking for, you need to read and go into query that folder, and then you need to find the file that match what you need. Then you have to be able to open up the file and read it. So that was the mechanics I was more focused on because that was gonna be more complexity than the AI to me.
Mhm.
Because that would have been AI could just been able to read where I post the data and then be able to use that as input to do the things that the optimization or computation, whatever. But the reading the be able to read and write the data was more intriguing to me.
Mhm.
All right. So the next thing is my use case around AI using tech savvy solutions, right? Because they're just like any other company. They want to be able to improve the efficiency of their operations. They want to be able to figure out how to reduce time and implement my data processes. How can I reduce the time to market, basically, to implement a solution? And so they want to use AI in that to improve their success of the project. And so here's one of the challenges. You have complex data requirements. It may be difficult to accurately capture and define any requirements from diverse sources. That's one thing you have to figure out how we use AI to do that. If I am talking with, and this has happened, I'm pretty sure that you guys have experience doing this. If you're talking with 5 different stakeholders, each one have a different background and role in this project, then you're talking to you're getting captured in 5 different perspectives. So you have to capture that, and then you have to figure out, okay, what is the same across all 5 different perspectives that you can pull out and be able to get them to buy in. And so get them to agree on that one single commonality between all 5. And then once you do that, then you go through the next one, then the next one, and pull in. So you need AI to be able to do the same thing you would do during a conversation or dialogue on the interview process. And you have to figure out how you could get AI to do that efficiently to reduce time. So y'all have to think about how you can do this efficiently, how you can do this in the less time than you have to have a human to do it. So that's one of my difficulties that I face with using AI in that piece of what we do today. And then, of course, large scale data migration, the need to migrate large volumes of data with minimal disruption. There's 2 things that is very critical. They don't want to Most clients don't want a long period of downtime of their main system they're trying to move away from because they still have to earn money, they still have to conduct business, and they don't want to lose any data that may be important to them. And through that whole data migration process, you have to think about, is there anything that's going to cause them downtime? Is there anything that's going to cause to lose data? So those things you have to highlight and raise the risk of what that, so they can set expectation doing large scale migration, and with AI, because AI is not foolproof. So you got to incorporate your own version of foolproof. If AI may pause, if it may crash, or it may not be able to capture the large scale data. So what's some of the limitation when it says large scale? Because we don't know what large scale may mean. It may be 20 gigs of data, maybe large scale with your AI. It may be 1 terabyte. It does, you don't know, right? So those are things you have to test out and see what's the limitation around large scale data issues. And ensuring data consistency, right? Maintaining consistency and quality across multiple integrated systems. Using AI to do that. How can you maintain that using AI? I've had clients where integration between 3 different systems, and there may be some data consistency that may not be because of the integration itself, it may be because the source data is causing inconsistency. That wasn't thought through during the requirements, and it wasn't captured during your testing, because it may be something that was new introduced that that you were unaware of during your requirement sessions that may impact your integration of the data consistency. And then so how AI will respond to that? How AI will respond to when you're capturing all the data, the requirements been captured from your stakeholders, but they missed something. And so now your integration is not showing the data they looking for in a new system because there may be something to miss. And then the last thing is efficiency of integration. You want to optimize performance. No one wants the integration solution to run without being optimized. Meaning, I had give you an example. We use Tech Savvy as a use case, and one of the systems they like to use with Azure, we use Azure Data Services. Data Service is a another solution to integrate your systems using Azure services. It to me is it's supposed to be, it's, I think using Azure Data Services for integration or even for migration, it should be for very simple use cases, unless they have improved how their integration process. Prime example, if at any point that you change your mapping requirements or the client wants their mapping requirement changed, one of the challenges I face with using Azure Data Service is that every time you have to update a field map, one field map, you have to do all field mapping. So if you have 100 fields mapped, that means every time you have one field change, you have to remap all 100 fields. That is very time consuming as well as room for error. And so you have to be extremely careful about using AI to do that because there may be some issues around it. And that would be one way I would love AI to do. If there was a requirement change of field mapping, instead of me manually have to remap all fields, use AI to do it. But you just have to make sure that there is a good process and it maps it the way it needs, because there was some criteria around those mapping that has to happen, some custom mapping that had to happen, transformation rules that you don't want to lose in those remapping. And typically you end up losing those. You have to redo it all over again. So those are some challenges that I face around my integration using certain platforms. You got it, Ryan.
I just want to give you a chance to, if you wanted to conclude, we got about 2 minutes, so I wanted to give you, if in case there was something you wanted to get to at the end.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Thank you for the time check. I needed that. All right, as you can see, I had a lot to cover. I just wanted to kind of give you guys a good bulk of information that I hope that helps. This my last thing was just quickly is Data Cloud. I know it's new to some people, and may not be new to others. Data Cloud is a Salesforce solution now, a Salesforce component that they use Data Cloud to help integrate their data across different Salesforce products, but also you can integrate data that lives outside of Salesforce. It is not a means to replace third-party integration. So you have to find the right use case that includes Data Cloud, and if you need to go outside Data Cloud for your integration. So here are a couple of things. Is a cloud-based platform that facilitates storage, management, integration, as well as to analyze vast amounts. So it's just Salesforce way to give you another way to do a full 360 view of a customer, right? And so just give a single view of the customer where you don't have to go leaps and bounds to view that customer. Data Cloud kind of helps you get that unified view of that single customer across all your different products and across all your different landscapes about that single customer. So I wanted to, since we have a little time, I know that Ryan and Whitney had talked a lot in questions they brought up about different things and the subject I covered. But is anyone else have anything they want to kind of speak on or has questions?
We have time for one. I think it's good that we can get in touch. I think it would be great. You probably are happy to have people connect with you on your website or on, also, what socials are you on? If they
I
want to
am
connect.
on LinkedIn. You can definitely, if you guys go to the website, you can see all the all the socials. But I'm on LinkedIn, Sonia McNeil. I'm on Instagram, MS Social, but you can Google me, Sonia McNeil, it'll show up. Stream Data is also on Instagram.
Yeah.
LinkedIn Stream Data. I am on Facebook. Sonia McNeil. Stream Data is on Facebook. So you can either search me on Sonia McNeil or you search by STRM Data, and you'll